Speaker Pro Tem. I was born on a Air Force base at Nellis Air Force Base because my mom and dad were both in the service. My brother was born at Warren Air Force Base. My sister was born at Selfridge Air Force Base in Nashville, or outside of Nashville. I don't think it was right in Nashville. I grew up thinking that dads came home wearing fatigues and green baseball caps because that's what my dad did every day. I grew up thinking that you moved every couple of years, that you could never have really close friends because your friends were leaving and you were always leaving. I grew up not really appreciating family get-togethers and big holidays because most of the big holidays and gatherings we had were just the five of us because we were, somewhere, either in the country or overseas. And so when the time came for me that was to enlist, it just seemed to be one of the most natural things to do because that's what, I had always seen, and that's how I had always lived. So I didn't really give it a second thought. And that was in August of 1974 when I enlisted into the Air Force. I wasn't drafted, okay? There were a lot of guys and women who were in active military service who didn't go over to Vietnam. And we were still a part of the support of all of those people that were over there. And there were people who didn't leave the country. They stayed right here and supported those people who came back. I can only imagine the stories that doctors and nurses have of putting people back together when they came back from Vietnam. I can only imagine the stories that therapists and other members in companies would have dealing with hearing the stories from their others. When I was in, as I say, I didn't go to Vietnam. The guys that went into the service from my high school, and it was a all-boys Catholic school, and it was predominantly a college preparatory school. 94% of us would go on to college, but I know about a half a dozen of us did go into the service after that. A friend of mine that I got to know when I moved here to Denver was Dave Steinbach, and Dave is a couple of years older than me. And so he went in and came from Denver, and he told me the story about there was 20 of them that went in when Dave went in. And 15 months later, when their tour was over, only 2 of them came back. So the numbers that we heard while we were reading this, a lot of those guys were a part of that. And we've already heard everybody talking about, people not wanting to tell their stories. And I never heard very much from Dave until one day we're on a road trip going across the country to a conference or something. And I don't know what the word was. I don't know what was said. But all of a sudden, Dave just started telling us about a mission that he had gone on one day. Apparently, there were some snipers, and they were holding down a supply path that was leading into the camp that they were in, and him and several other guys had to go out and try to, take these guys out and open up the path again. And Dave told us the whole story. He remembered everybody's name. He remembered where they were. He remembered somebody jumping out from behind something. He told us all the way to the end when they ended up finding the snipers. And apparently, and this is, and if you would ever talk to anybody, or they've told, apparently they would tie these guys up into the tops of the trees so you would never know if they, had died or not, and you would just keep shooting them because they never fell down. And that was because that's what they did. They would tie them up in there, and so you just have to keep fighting them. And that story went on for about an hour. And I don't know what to say. But when he was all finished, it just clicked off, and we were driving down the road. And I think that's what happens, and you've heard from others where they talk about the guys don't speak up, and that there's fewer of the Vietnam vets out there, and there certainly are. And, just to make you aware, if you know them, if you're around them, be prepared. Do your best to listen, and because they want to tell the story and get that out. And they thank you all for their support, and I certainly thank you for your support.